I can actually see things this time, guys. Hello.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Liana.
We all made it.
Some of us, we're getting there. Eva, Hans, how are you? Alyssa, welcome back.
Video stopped working.
There we go.
There you go.
Where's the video?
Oh, I can see myself. I was in a Teams meeting yesterday and for some reason I couldn't, not that everyone else could see me, I couldn't see myself.
Hey,
It's odd.
just quick question, guys. Speaking of, this is Hans. Do you see a black screen or do you see my grizzly mug?
I see a black screen.
Okay. And Lisa, we can't hear you, but okay.
Might be safer. You don't hear me.
Rob, I wanted to share, I did do a mini attendance from the participants and I did count 3 or 4. And so I you can start whenever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ileana, are you going to be sharing the slides?
I can. I'm also taking notes. Could you, it doesn't matter, just going to be taking notes.
Yeah, it might be easier for you to do that because I'm not sure I have the right slide deck. Let me try that. Sorry, gotta figure out which file it was again. Is it all right if I use the one that is on the web page?
Absolutely, yeah.
And let's try to share that. Share this one. And I'm currently scrolling through the slide deck, trying to find our questions here.
That looks like the advanced material.
Yeah, this is the advanced material. Am I on the wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can even go back to, it says, where does this, right here, discussion guide, feedback form. You got it right there.
Let me go with the advanced material because the advanced material should have the questions and they're a little larger, I think. Let's see.
There it is. There you got it.
There we go.
Yeah, okay, awesome.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Now I'm going to try to figure out how I get everybody back into your faces on Teams. That's why I didn't want to share. There's that. Teams, there we go. Multiple screens, multiple windows open. Okay, so Robert Gibson from Arlington County DES Transportation. Welcome back to our participants in Group E. Ileana, I believe you are one of our newest participants, and it would be lovely if you took 1 second to introduce yourself before jumping in.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Ileana Gonzalez. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning for APS. I was previously principal and assistant principal in the county, and so really excited to join the planning team. Thank you for having me here. I'm serving as a note taker, and then any tech questions also I can help.
And Ileana, do we have anybody in our group right now that is not assigned otherwise, or should we just get input from everybody tonight? We don't have too many people here. It might not be too bad to get everybody's input.
Hey there, this is Preston Judy. I'm one of the traffic consultants on the project, so I'm just here to observe and take some feedback.
Thanks, Preston. Good to see you again. Okay, yeah. So last time I think we reconstituted this group and everybody got a chance to meet, so I'm going to save time and jump into the questions. Heather, I think that you're new. And if you would like to just say hello, please feel free.
Hi, yes, I'm Heather Jones. I was on vacation during the last meeting and I represent Lion Park.
Very good. Thank you so much. And Hans, you weren't here last meeting, but you've been in some of our other meetings in the past.
Correct. Yeah, I'm Hans Baumann. I'm sort of a floating APS rep in PFRC, which means my role is a little bit vague in APS projects. So anyway, I've been re-engaging in the Career Center project. Yes. Good to see everyone.
Oh, okay, everybody. So let's dive into our first big question. Updates on the site and landscape design, including included in illustration of expected improvements throughout the campus, phasing, planting strategies, and site circulation. And so this slide shows both some of the improvements generally as the building, the new ACCS building is constructed, along with temporary or site improvements to support the Montessori program, sort of in a combined slide. But we do know that APS has talked about moving the Montessori in the long term over to the existing Career Center. But it's still important that we speak about the interim facilities that APS has considered to support that program in the meantime. And so our first question is, what do you like? And I am going to jump in and see if anybody wants to start out. You can either speak up or raise your hand and I'll call on you. Okay, not everybody wants, so I will go with, yeah, Alyssa.
Sure. I would like to understand to the left of the existing Career Center and to the south, I guess, or the bottom of the proposed parking garage, there's a tremendous amount of proposed planting area. It seems to me that that's a whole lot of real estate with no program. So I'd like to understand what the thought is there. Are we doing community gardens? Are we doing student gardens? Are we, what are we doing? Because that's a lot of real estate. So
we may have to ask for additional information from the APS staff, but it's my understanding that to some extent this green area is a placeholder, because right now I think that's a large parking lot with a retaining wall. Yep. It's impervious area. I think that it's generally outside of the scope of this discussion, but I do think you're right. There's long-term some discussion of, is that space for the change in the Montessori program? Well, is it something else? So
right. But if we're going to think about moving Montessori, they have specific playground requirements, and it would be important to plan for that, not just the school building square footage. So I like it. I love green space, but our playgrounds are not really green and growing spaces as we're currently building them, and most of them are not pervious. So I'd like to make sure we're not claiming credit or planning on credit for something that might in the future not be as green as it looks on this picture.
Yeah, and then maybe we can change the graphics there.
Yeah, Robert, can I jump in, Robert, on that one?
Absolutely, Hans.
And kind of, first of all, I think Elisa's answering 1B, but anyhow.
Sorry.
No, thank you. And I completely agree with her, because I guess what I did hear you say, Robert, was that's out of scope. But that is explicitly shown as green, which makes me, what your comment and the greening on that diagram makes me wonder, is it not certain that that's going to be reverted to pervious space from currently being paved?
So I'm going to speak for my inferences only, but I do know that when the MPSA program gets moved over, I think APS has a considerable amount of additional thought to put into how that program is supported, both from access, outside learning, and play space. And so while it's shown as green here, I would think that is a poor representation in this drawing.
But I think Hans' point is worth pursuing, because there's no guarantee that MPSA moves here and not somewhere else, in which case would would this be green space, or
Okay.
should it be left as question mark in a different graphic color to be determined? Because otherwise you're making a pretty bold statement that folks could then come back and say, wait a minute, we thought we were getting a chunk of green on 9th and it's not. So I just want to make sure we're thinking that. And I'm sorry I jumped ahead.
Thank
There-
you both. I'm trying to make sure I capture this in the notes. Are we talking about what number green space?
Number
It-
5 over here.
Well, no, there are a lot of 5s. There are a lot of 5s.
You're right. Thank you.
So it's it's along 9th Street and not the parking garage.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the other graphic question I would like to ask, and maybe someone can help me, but the distinguished site plan key between proposed tree and existing tree seems hard to discern when they've shaded the trees for those that are over grass versus over pavement, or over earth versus pavement. I'm having a hard time figuring out which are the existing trees. Can someone help me?
I think that there are very few of them, and that's part of the challenge. I think there will be some on the back of sidewalk area, possibly here on the north of the large green rectangle above number 3. I think that there are some that are inside of this area to the north of the existing ACCS, as well as there should be some existing on South Walter Reed, but these are all details that we'll get down into very specific information with the tree plan with the use permit submission.
Right, I get that, but there is a massive oak tree outside of the library, between the library and Walter Reed, and it's faded out to the point that it looks like existing trees are not as valued. And I want to make sure that that is treasured and protected as the largest tree on this block. So I do think the graphic in the key is not helpful. So I just am making a recommendation that before we have another discussion that we know which are existing, because also staging and platforms for all the supply deliveries often wipe out all the street trees as the cranes are lifting massive loads of windows and drywall up and over. So I want to make sure that we're clear on existing trees that can be preserved. That's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Kate, would you like to provide your thoughts on 1A or 1B?
Sure. I think overall I like it. I think there's, it's a good use of space. There's a lot happening in this entire design. I'm from forestry and natural resources, so the synthetic turf and all that stuff is not what I would go for, but these are schools, and I understand that that's why we have the playgrounds and the synthetic turf and all the other things. But overall, I think this is really pretty exciting, and I'm really, kind of feel really good about this. I do want to say I thought for a minute it was just maybe it was the colors on my computer or something, but I can't tell the difference between the existing and the proposed trees. And I also can't tell the difference between the proposed planting area and the existing site conditions. So I don't know. I think having some different colors in there would be helpful for understanding this graph. The one thing that for 1B that I would like to throw out there is when I do look at the trees, and especially, here we are, it's been so stinking hot, and the shade, having the ability to have big canopy trees eventually, and especially keeping the existing ones that happen to be on the lot, just make such an enormous difference. It's really the difference between being able to be outdoors and just not being able to stand it. So when I look at these graphs, it's like we have trees that are, I think of them I'm assuming this is kind of like placeholders because they're just all kind of lined up like, you know, a marching band or something. And one of the things that I was thinking about was that when they were talking about the comments from the students and they were excited about having outdoor areas to socialize and to maybe even have classroom education going on, where would that happen? And there are spaces here that I can see where we could do that, but I'm not sure where they, you know, it's like, I'm hoping that when we get to the details on the landscaping part, we can take that into consideration and maybe say, okay, in this area here, we definitely want to set this up with, you know, tables and benches and things like that so that you could have an outdoor class or you could have it for socializing, and we want to have the trees shading it and that kind of thing, as opposed to what I'm actually seeing on this graph. You know, having the street trees lined up like that is great. I'm just hoping that, you know, we'll be able to, when we get into the details of the planting areas, we can actually put a lot of thought into making that really usable and pleasant so that people want to use it. But otherwise, looking at the rest of the stuff and the things we're going to be talking about later as we get into more details, I think there's a lot of really interesting options. And overall, I'm really positive about it. Thank you.
Very good. So we're probably running out of our time for number one, but I do want to spend some time to get through additional comments on this, and I'm going to jump to Hans and then Stephen to make sure we get input from everybody. Hans, go right ahead.
Yeah, just real briefly, something I do like is I like the corridor through the campus, through the middle of the block. You know, the two, looks like the two line perhaps. What I'm hoping for is that that's a path that can be used by the community members as well to cut through the site in the future. Currently, we have a lot of big monolithic APS sites like this. I'm thinking of the Washington Lee site, which is very hard to get through between Quincy and Stewart Street. And so I would love to see that being a path that perhaps during the school day has some constriction if necessary, but that in general is an access path that bicycles and pedestrians can easily use to get through the site. So I'm happy to see it there. I'd like it to remain open if at all possible.
Thank you. Stephen.
So, sorry, I was sure concerned I was on mute. So, you know, I really appreciate that.
So, I'm sorry, Stephen. Your microphone is either really low or maybe you're a little far from it.
Okay. Hold on. Let me try and just. How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's a little better.
Okay.
But,
hold on. Sorry about that. You know, I would just say that I'm really appreciate more the information about sustainability that was provided. Some of the information about the sort of renewables on the site, the inclusion of solar panels, diverting construction of waste from landfills. All that is really important. That's something that I think I was probably talking too much about earlier in the program. I would just say that in general, more information about you know, the targets for CO2 emissions and how this fits in with Arlington's larger goals around reduction of CO2 emissions. I mean, obviously we're seeing the impacts of climate change right now. So, you know, and the county's laid out a bunch of goals around, you know, how our buildings impact climate change. And so hopefully as we go on, more information will be provided about how this building design fits in with those goals.
and before we switch topics, have I missed anybody? Okay.
Yeah, Robert, this is Marion from Columbia Heights.
Oh, please join us and
Sure.
jump in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I do like the seemingly maximum number of trees surrounding the site. I think it will help ease the grand scale appearance of what the proposed new building will be. Maybe tone it down a little bit from the Walter Reed and 7th Street sides. I also do like seeing as much proposed grass or green space squeezed in wherever possible. And I do just want to echo Elisa's sentiments regarding what will be planned for those numbered 5 areas next to the existing Career Center once MPSA moves in, and if the playgrounds are going to be constructed over there. And outside of the scope, just briefly, with regard to the playground, if they're building a new one next to the existing Montessori, I'd like to know if it could stay in the future for community use versus being ripped out once MPSA gets a new one on the other end of the site. Thank you.
So I'm going to jump in for Jeff. I know that MPSA has, APS has talked about, to the extent possible, reusing or maximizing the life of the playground that is put in for the Montessori, either through putting those that equipment in the new locations when the program moves across to the existing ACC, or otherwise looking at that. I think that Jeff and the team will look at talking more about what may or may not happen with the space once the existing Montessori is removed, because that's going to create a large number of opportunities for outdoor space and field space for the programs. So I think that we have more to come to talk about that. And then one thing to sort of build on what the group has talked about, which is the value of the trees around the site. I know that we, Arlington County and APS, are talking about how best to address overhead utilities on this site, particularly as it relates to tree conflicts and conflicts with the future canopy. So more to come on that, but it is an area that we understand that all of the groups are very interested in creating that nice urban canopy around this site and within the site.
Thanks, Rob. I think you put some good words in my mouth. I think you heard me say that a couple of times. I just wanted to emphasize that with regard to the reuse of the existing ACC, we will be having a separate design process, as well as what happens on the corner of Highland and 7th. So we will be looking at that. And again, Rob did hit what we're trying to do, which is we will probably be relocating the equipment that we do install to the new Career Center, but none of that is set in stone until we go through that other process.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to take us on to our second question. This question really focuses around the building massing, the form, and the refinement that APS has brought to this project. Initial selection of exterior materials, and developing the elevations along all sides of the buildings. If you have a very good memory, you'll remember that this was looked at in slides 30 through 46 of the advanced materials. There is a lot of information there. And I now challenge you all to dig into your memories and respond to what do you like about this project and the information that we've presented so far in those slides, and what do you feel requires refinement. And I'm going to go in a little bit of reverse order. And Marion, I would love for you to lead us off if you don't mind.
Great, thank you. And thank you for expanding on the playground issues previously. So I think that I like the mixed use of materials on the different sections of the building. I think it will help break up the overall facade and also add architectural interest. I like that they're especially proposing some brick and some masonry to help blend into the traditional aspect of the neighborhood. The homes and specifically the apartments across the street on Walter Reed are all brick. So I think that that's a good choice. And also I like that they're trying to hide the mechanical equipment on the roof. And I think these renderings are better than ones we've seen previously and are helpful as far as seeing the different levels, the massing, and now potential materials to help separate some of these spaces of the building.
Thank you. And now I'll jump over to Stephen.
I really just I guess my comments aren't too detailed in this. I really enjoyed just the open space, and it felt I guess I don't know if you could sorry, I know that other parts they mentioned biophilic design, but this kind of had a very natural open feel to it. So I guess I just had a general positive reaction.
Thank you. Alyssa.
So I'm excited about the modern aesthetic and the colors and the material choices. It'll be a big contrast to the existing neighbors. And one thing I think we want to always be attentive to is the reflectivity of those surfaces. So we're not blinding people off of the metal panels or the highly polished glass, that we're not frying them like ants on the pavement. It is something to consider with the rising and setting sun angles. They can generate a lot of glare. So something to be thoughtful of in respecting neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kate.
Can I add one more thing? May I?
Oh yeah, you can, please.
And I know I'm sort of going backwards here, but I want to say that the trees that are surrounding this building are public right-of-way trees. They're surrounding the block. I've had 3 prime students on a career center project this past month looking at tree canopy on the 5 high schools in the county and doing a statistical analysis on the health, the welfare, the species, and looking at are they working on heat island mitigation, things like that. And what we're seeing on most of these schools is that there are very few trees actually on APS property. And that concerns me because as a citizen, we're all trying to plant trees in our yards. And I don't see that APS is stepping up and populating their properties with trees. And these young men who've been working with me for this month are going to start to advocate with the PTAs. And we've tried to reach out to Mr. Meikle, but he pushed us off to somebody else to say, we're not going to make a difference in our climate if we don't plant trees and plant them now. So I just want to say that the planting plan looks very sparse on the interiors, and I'm hoping in future options that the interior of the site becomes more wooded and shade, and it will help everything, including stormwater runoff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Hans, would you like to provide some input?
Yeah. First of all, I want to just actually echo what Elisa was just mentioning about trees and really point out. So at Glebe Elementary, we planted some trees when my son was in kindergarten. He just graduated college. And those trees now are finally actually useful shade trees. So it takes 15 years to get from a successful planting to a good tree. So the notion, any existing tree we can preserve is worth decades of tree canopy. So the thought of, I know it's inconvenient to work around a tree when you're doing construction, but especially those big ones, if we can do anything we can to preserve those. But on the design question, I really like the terracing. My son goes to the new HB Woodlawn. Actually, 2 of my sons have gone to the new HB Woodlawn. I really appreciate having those outdoor terrace spaces. I think that's a great feature to be incorporated. I like the way it steps the building away from the neighborhoods as well. I am concerned that that is directly across the street from traditional garden apartments. And so in some ways, having an echo is important. I do like the modern materials and design. I think it would be nice if we could figure out a way to nod to the neighborhood whenever possible. So, and I see the design trying to do that, and if it continued to try to do that, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you add to that again? You said that your concern, is it the noise, the echo you said, or about?
No, I didn't mean, I meant from a design perspective that
Okay,
the
that's just
facade on Walter Reed could echo the garden apartments across the street, as opposed to being in strong contrast to them.
oh, got it.
The
Thank you.
modern materials are just really contrasting. So if there's some way to think about ways of
So Hans,
acknowledging the neighborhood you're building in, yeah.
To try to refine that thought, I think what are you looking at in echoing that in material choice, in massing or scale? Do you have a preference, or those are largely brick buildings with some I think that those buildings have some of the traditional detailing that many of our garden apartment buildings have, with the corner detailings, maybe the masonry window.
Build colonial style school, and we shouldn't.
No.
And so I think echoing it in design, in material choices is how we should do that.
Okay.
Rather than having columns and things, I think it makes more sense to echo it with material choices and to keep material choices reflective of what's across the street from them.
But it would be nice for a specific call out and thought to that that area as the design team progresses that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have a minute or two on this. I just want to, has any of the conversation that anybody has brought up brought additional ideas to anybody that they'd like to add before we move on? And if not, I will move us to our next topic. Oh, this is a good one. The parking garage. So the updated parking design is generally shown on the slides 47 through 53 in the advanced materials. APS has looked at, the form itself is a parking garage, a pretty standard rectangle, very much designed for function. But they have looked at different ways to clad or provide exterior detail to the building. And so if you see on this slide, the image to the left is what you would see if you were on 9th Street going up to the site. I think that, as we talked about, the green rectangle is a bit of a placeholder more so. If you go out there today to the site, there's a fair amount of elevation change between the sidewalk level and the well, I'd call it the parking garage for the auto body shop or the auto shop. So this is a little bit off, but I think you get an idea of the paneling that APS is trying to show. And then the other image is looking down from the corner of Highland across the street at the EDC garage and down towards the or actually looking north east towards the building. So I will just sort of jump in and see if Kate wants to start us off for this one.
Sure. I actually really like this. I think it's different. I think parking garages are usually just awful looking. And, I kind of wonder, is this going to look really dated in a few years? But I still just really like it. And I like the way you're going to be getting airflow in the parking garage, the way this is set up. I think it's really nice. And I do think, having the trees around that, the way, we talked about the last time as well. will make a big difference on this. So, yeah, I think this is definitely one of the more interesting parking garages I've seen in a long time.
Thank you. And Hans, I see your mic blinking on and off, so I'll call on you.
Oh, didn't mean to make my mic blink. I guess I would just briefly say that the Biphilia themed facade, if that's what it's called, if I'm pronouncing those words correctly, that is facing that green square, which could be potentially, I understand, perhaps even a playground for Montessori in the future. So I think we just need to be sensitive to it. However we design that wall of the garage, that it accommodates whatever future usage of that space we anticipate, or range of uses. So I like the design in general. The building across the street from 8th, am I in the right corner? Right street name? 9th, I'm sorry, across the street from 9th is pretty unattractive. So I don't feel like we have a huge obligation here to make it beautiful on this spot. But I think I like the design. Good job.
Okay. Stephen.
Just like to reiterate some of what I was like designed before. Really like any impact there? No. Okay. I'll try and speak up. I was gonna say, so I just wanted to reiterate and what people have said about support for the biophilic design. I think it looks beautiful. I don't really have anything negative to say on this point.
Thanks, Stephen. Let's see. Alyssa.
There. I want to go back to the biophilia themed facade. So is it just an artistic representation on a screen, or are we actually going to do something biophilic? Is it going to be a living wall? Could we actually do something biophilic rather than a theme, a fake theme, right? I mean, I know there's samples 2 pages down or 3 pages down on slide 54, where they have a screen with the silhouette of deciduous trees. It's very interesting, but there's nothing biophilic about it, right? Am I right, Stephen?
Sorry,
I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to get a conversation here. Are we greenwashing this, or is it public art? What are we doing? But it isn't anything living. So it's not contributing to environmental quality, which is, I think, the overall goal of biophilia design is.
Right.
Yeah,
and also the health of human beings on the site, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And
yeah, my support for it was really just a design issue. I'm sorry, I got distracted there for a second. But yeah, it was just
Right.
I'm in favor of biophilia, but yeah, I wasn't saying that I thought it was going to have contribute to our sustainability goals.
Right.
So do you know what it means to be biophilia themed? Or is it just a theme, like Elisa says, like a painting?
I think that's a question that we need to pull out from this group and advance back to APS. I suspect I have an answer, but I don't want to speak for APS on this one. And then Marion, I'm gonna ask you to provide some input, and then I'm gonna pose a question that's not on this slide to us, as we have a little bit of time, I think, left for this topic.
Thanks, Robert. I am pleasantly surprised by these renderings in how they are attempting to conceal the overall appearance of the garage. I think and I hope that the neighbors, especially along Highland, who will be facing this, will be appreciative of that. Yeah, again, the question of whether or not that one wall is just a theme or will actually have some kind of texture or living aspect to it would just be helpful to know. And then also, do you know, are these colors just placeholder colors, or would these colors be under consideration or already chosen?
No, I think that the color palette is still up for discussion. So if you have some thoughts about that, please feel free to provide them.
Well, teal is my favorite color, so I'm all for the teal panels. I think it'll add almost, it's kind of a rich, bold color, but I think it complements the neighborhood, and as you can see, the green of the trees kind of pop against it. A little concerned about the other wall. It's kind of like a citrusy, limey color, and along the stairwell. Again, but if those decisions will be made later on, I'm not terribly concerned about it now, but I like the overall look of it.
Thank you. So I've got a question for this group about the fifth side of this building, which is the roof. And there are a number of ways to go with the roof. I don't think that we've talked about the roof much in any of this discussion. I think APS has assumed that it's going to be the parking. And with the use of parking on the top level, that's an assumption. There are other uses for the top level of parking garages. This is the area that does get direct sun. We've seen anything from solar panels to urban farms on roofs of projects in the region and throughout the country. And as we're looking at things, I was wondering if there's just any discussion in this group that might help with that element. And I go ahead, Alyssa.
Well, I'm all for photovoltaics on the roofs. It provides a shade canopy for the cars that do park up there. And we ought to be collecting and generating electricity and modeling environmental action on all things energy related. So I'm for that. And I was thinking the question you were going to ask was budget wise. What happens if we budget wise can't afford all these fancy, lovely screens on this parking garage? Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say, I would trade the facade on 9th Street for at least the mounts for future photovoltaic on the roof, so that we are planning to add them and have the structural load designed for it. And the chambers or the closets or the pathways for the electrical transmission. I would rather put my money into the photovoltaic framework and then address the facade at some point when the ACC or the Ethiopian group in their parking garage come in for redevelopment. But at the moment, I don't see that there is a neighbor there that will appreciate it. I understand folks driving will go like, wow, that's fancy. But in a budget conscious mind or project value engineering, which often for APS is cost cutting, I see that these are trade-offs we need to talk about.
Thank you. And as you consider that, I think we've a little bit forgotten about the single family homes along Highland. Would that be a priority for that end?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that I specifically said 9th Street.
Okay, yep. Thank you.
Because 9th Street looks out at a parking garage in the AT&T building. And there is no resident there, and they are boring facades. So there's no one sitting on a front porch, right? But no, I think we definitely have to be kind to the folks on South Highland, absolutely, and South 7th and Walter Reed. But if you're going to trade monies to effectuate future PV and not preclude it, we need to design the garage to carry that load.
Totally agree. Hey, Robert, so question for you. You talked about the roof as if the roof was potential real estate for creativity as opposed to required for parking. In the parking calculations, I assume that deck is needed for parking spaces. So when we talk about roof, it would be roof over parking. Is that right?
Well, I think what I'm saying is that should there be a roof? Should there be a use above the top of the parking? And that's just an open question for discussion and thought as we look at creating the community and the spaces that we want. I know that APS is very conscious on cost, and certainly that's an extra element. But if there were things that this group would have recommendations on, I'll let you speak to that, Hans.
And I mean, the notion of having a rooftop community garden or green space of any kind, even green space for the, originally there was some talk long ago of the parking lot or the field between the new school facility and, my map isn't working in my brain. Is that Highland? Having parking underneath it, right? That with a synthetic field on top, right? Because that's been, I guess, abandoned because it's too expensive to do underground parking there. But it's a real shame when we have parking lots with nothing above them. So, I can't imagine APS not value engineering a rooftop garden out of the project. I mean, I'm cynical maybe, but that's why I think Elisa's idea of having photovoltaic mounts there is actually realistic and possible, as opposed to having a structure that's going to support some kind of alternate use of.
Listen.
So the other thing I would say about community gardens is I think you have to do universal access. You have to design it so that it doesn't rely upon a locked door to an elevator or whatever to get up to work on your gardens. So it needs to be on the ground plane where folks can, from the community, can access it throughout the year. That's a big thing to me. And I know APS typically shuts off their water spigots during the summer, and PTAs are driving gallons of water over and dumping water to keep the plants alive because we don't get the keys. So the rooftop, it just frightens me what that would be. But it's also out of sight from passive security. No one can see what's happening on a rooftop. Right. That's not a very comfortable feeling in a community, I think, especially with children around. So I would say I'd vote for ground level gardening with the students that the community can contribute and find as a common path to build relationships and value. That's where I would go on ground level.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So we are moving along a little bit earlier. I don't want to take us off the garage topic unless anybody had any. Actually, yeah. Kate?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I agree. I'm all for this, for the urban gardens, but I take your point that there are issues with that on the rooftop. I love the idea of the solar panels. I read that, there's probably issues, I'm not sure what they are, for having EV stations, but the idea of having EV stations that were running with electricity off of your solar panels, or, if there is some way that you could show that these solar panels are actually giving back to the community, even if it's going back to the grid and we're getting, credits for it. But, it's like that kind of thing. I think where the community can actually see where these investments are good for Arlington, other than just, feel good kind of stuff. So I think that would be great. The other thing is if you did something that would be a whole lot more passive, but still biophilic in its own way. If you had photovoltaic panels up there, you could still do things with grasses and other things that could be bird habitat that would require absolute minimal, if any, human intervention. So, that would be something that we could look at that would kind of be a dual purpose for up there. That's
okay,
it.
You remind me of a beautiful example of something like that that I recommend anybody going and taking the opportunity for. If you have had the opportunity, you would understand it. MLK Library downtown, when they did the renovation of that, has a really wonderful roof space. So pinning nice projects around the area, and recommend that you take a look at that. Lisa.
I just wanted to chime in and say that I enjoy your comments, Kate, and I just really think we need to remember that the Career Center focuses on project-based learning. And right now they have a they've taken used photovoltaic panels, and at the scale of less than a bus stop, they have them and the students charge their telephones with them, so that they get a direct understanding that even on an overcast day in January, they have enough charge to reboot their lunchtime phone systems. So I think that from a sort of eco-diplomacy point of view, as much as you can have at ground level or visible, communicates that we are doing more than just talking about environmentalism and greening, but that we are demonstrating it and making it participatory to all who are there, whether they're children going to story hour, whether they're students, whether they're adults in continuing education classes, even people going by. Photovoltaic panels you can see from the ground and from around, which is great. I think sometimes we lose the community sense that the green roofs disappear because nobody sees them. At least on the terraces of the proposed Career Center building, the students will be engaging with those. They'll be outside their windows. So we'll not just get the aesthetic value and the function value, but we will get sort of the nod to the credit worthiness. Yeah, we're doing it. It's not out of sight. We can see it. And I think that says a lot to me, to be visible.
And Alyssa, please jump in if I'm mischaracterizing this or expanding too much on your own words. But I did hear something in your comment that I think is possibly very important to build on, which is the equitable distribution of our environmental investments in our school system. You know, I worked on the Discovery program and project in North Arlington. It's a net zero, if not better, building at this point. And so I think that what you were plugging was that equitable distribution of environmental investment.
Yes, and that's certainly what the 3 students who've been working for me for a month have been trying to show, is that we're not greening our properties equitably. They didn't have time to do all the schools, but just the high schools even, that we're not really investing in the trees and the plant material we should. And among them, I mean, I used to be on urban forestry when it was called urban forestry and commission. And back then we were told a street tree average life is 7 years. So we need to be the large trees that are on private property with meaningful root systems anticipated, or preserve the ones that are there, because only when you get them off the street side can you be sure that their lives are longer, and also that you can then specify trees that have that large canopy. Most of our street trees, I walked up and down Fairfax Drive today, our street trees are not really generating much canopy, and they're not reaching over the streets, and that's when there's underground utilities. It's they're really not doing the work of a shade tree that we give credit to when we call it a shade tree. And I think that's disappointing. Yorktown High School, in the middle of their parking lot, they have a big island and it's filled with miniature cherry trees. Yeah. You can't walk beneath them without poking out your eye. That's a perfect place for major canopy trees, and we don't have them there. So I am a tree hugger in every way possible, but I really want to plant more so there are more to hug.
Thank you. And I see Stephen's joined our group for our wrap-up question. I welcome aboard to listen to sort of our catch-all and final question on what have we missed? and what additional questions and concerns does the group have. I'm going to try to give everybody an opportunity to jump in by calling on folks, and then we'll go for a little bit more of a free-for-all. I think, Marianne, I think we missed you earlier, so I'm going to see if you want to provide input leading us off here.
Thank you. I think this has actually been a pretty well covered and thoughtful discussion. I've been leaning into what the other participants have been saying and the questions they've been asking. I actually don't have any specific additional questions or concerns. But I guess as far as the parking garage goes, it would be nice to know if there is a budget to actually enclose the upper level and give it a roof or not, so that the discussion can continue as to if there will be a roof or covering, what's the best use of that space. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Kate, I see you smiling, so please jump in. Oh, you're still,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah. Just one thing that occurs, I would really like to know, and I know this hasn't been decided yet, but it's going to make a big difference, I think, in where the conversation goes, is whether or not the utilities can be undergrounded. I mean, it's just, especially when we get into talking about the trees. The other thing is there really is obviously there is a lot of interest on the part of the students as well as on this commission with the outdoor education and providing ways for students to be outdoors and learn from nature and do projects and all of this kind of stuff. One of the things that I am kind of wondering though is what kind of resources does APS have to keep this, to maintain it? You know, it's one thing to build things and to have these gardens and, you know, and do this stuff, and it's great. But if nobody is around to maintain it, I mean, if it's going to be students, then that's one thing, you know, and that will kind of direct our thoughts there. If we've got other resources that we can pull in, then maybe we can be even more creative, you know, with it. My experience with schools is that, you know, in obviously big canopy trees, you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck, and they are relative, you know, they don't require a whole lot of maintenance except some watering and making sure you don't kill them with your lawnmowers. But, you know, most of the maintenance guys it's all they can do to keep the grass cut and what, you know, and the basics. So if that would be an interesting question, is just what kind of resources are going to be available to maintain these outdoor spaces, especially if we're talking, when we get to talking about the terraces and that kind of thing. So that would be my question.
And I'm going to jump back to Alyssa. You had a marked reaction to those comments.
I think that having walked about and looked at the trees on school and right of ways adjacent to schools, I think that maintenance is pretty much non-existent on these trees. There are some that have sun scald on Yorktown Boulevard that have been there for 12, 15 years. They aren't growing. They are near death. They have a few leaves. Nobody attends to them. Nobody. On the school property, it's, I don't know is that our crews really are trained to deal with the trees or to care for them. We're counting on the student committees and volunteer scout groups and the like to do service projects. It is pretty clear that that unfortunately APS does not value the investment in plant material on their properties. I mean, that's a broad, bold statement, but look around. When a tree comes down, they don't replant. They do not plant the next generation of trees.
So if I summarize this for our recording and for Ileana's purposes, it sounds like there is maybe some concern about APS's commitment to sustaining and achieving the pretty landscaping pictures that we're seeing here.
Well, yes, because, well, without the maintenance, we won't achieve the 20-year canopies upon which their permits are drawn, right? They're planning on a 20-year canopy. If the trees don't make it to 20 years and are not replaced, even if they are replaced, we're not getting the environmental value out of our investments. So I think it's a question to go to, we need to recommend investing in qualified and meaningful care and attention to the investment we make in landscape. It is not just aesthetic, it is functional, and it is essential for a healthy learning environment and a healthy physical environment.
And having worked with the students on the last charrette that we met with them on, I think one thing that I would add to this, and I don't know that I think I'm getting a little out of my lane adding things to this, but I'll take that prerogative. It was really interesting that the students do notice their environment. And I would say that beyond the policy objectives of our comprehensive plans and things like that, the way we maintain the outside planted environment of our schools is an indication to our students of the value of the place that we're sending them. And so I think it's important. Personally, I'm gonna just put it out there that I find that it is more important than we really give it credit to the experience of the campus and the statements that makes to how much we value the students, not just through the financial investment which we put in with our tax dollars. So I'm going to get off my high horse and
that was great.
Ask Hans to jump in.
I don't think I have anything to add except to maybe re-underline what I've heard. I mean, if the question is identify specific areas of the project, it's been a very clear theme here, in my opinion, that the trees need to be, we need to preserve the trees we've got, and we need to care for any new trees we plant. And I've seen that, again, at my own children's schools that they've gone to here in Arlington. The only reason trees survived is because PTA members took years to service those trees. It takes 5 years to establish a tree, at least. And then you still got to be careful after that as well, but it just takes a lot of work. And APS tends to put something in the ground and call it done. And again, I would say any developer does that. Developers all over the county get credit for putting some, fast-growing junk tree on a plan, and then they done. Yep. Anyhow. And the other thing I would say, other than beyond the tree thing, is the other thing I would pull out of the conversation that I heard as a theme is that the direction of the site matters. So many of our site pictures look like from outer space without any notion of what block you're on. And the 9th Street facade has very different needs than the 8th Street facade. Is that 8th or 7th down there? I'm sorry where the light is. And so just being specific, we shouldn't treat every facade as equal, because I really believe the south facade is one where we had to value engineer, we perhaps should, whereas the Walter Reed or Highland Street, we need to continue to invest in for our neighbor's sake. So
yeah. And to some extent that probably I don't think I want to see value engineering around the principal building, but there are spots where things are more important, and I think that as we get into the next stages of design, I charge you all to continue to focus on that and provide feedback on that. And Hans, to express what you were saying was that you would like to see some more human scale renderings of spaces and places as we advance the design to provide more detailed comment as it relates to sort of more detailed renderings.
Sure, yes, yeah, that sounds right. Thank you.
Yeah, Alyssa?
I know we have no time, but I wanted to say that as it's shown on the Highland side of the ACC building is an outdoor shared green canopied space, green trees, right? That the students could share. And at Yorktown, if you go up Yorktown Boulevard and you pull in to their bus loop off of Yorktown Boulevard, they have a magnificent pin oak, a masterful tree, just glorious. And next to it is a terrace with honey locust. And all I could think when I was there 2 or 3 weeks ago was during COVID, this would have been so lovely if the honey locust trees were taller than 12 feet. But they were planted, they must have no soil, they must have no meaningful water. They are stunted and they haven't grown. So
Yeah.
the students couldn't use the outdoor classroom space as designed because it wasn't the right tree in the right place, probably wasn't the right soil in the right place either. So no one's, that's put in and looked away. And so we lost a huge opportunity for a lovely outdoor meetings and learning space or lunching space. It's just cooking in the sun.
Yeah,
And
as
the
we
tree-
have,
Yeah.
as
So
my
we have to
neighborhood
go.
has, my neighborhood has these beautiful pin oaks too, and they grow large and majestic. But I do find that the understory trees are really disadvantaged.
These are not understory. These are the next chunk of land use.
Oh,
So
okay.
they are not in the canopy. They are probably in the critical root zone.
Okay.
So they probably needed some real fertilizers in there and the like. But yeah, the oaks are smart. They wipe out their understory for self-preservation. Only their own saplings survive.
Well, everybody, I think Ileana's gonna kick me under the proverbial table and get us back to the group. Ileana, before we did that, did you have any questions that you wanted to clarify before taking out some of these comments to the broader group?
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to be sharing out like kind of 3 overall. And so I just want to make sure that we have kind of, we're on the same page. I was really thinking about the preservation of the existing trees was something that we really were, had a robust conversation about the consideration of the neighbors, depending on the side, especially of the garage, in terms of the aesthetics, and then also the maintenance of what we're planning in APS. What is our commitment in terms of budget, and what is our commitment to make sure that we're preserving? So those are the 3 that I was thinking I kind of captured the most. I got a lot of impact, like when people repeated things, I would say like, okay, once, twice, 3, 4, and so that those are the 3 that had the most.
And when we hit leave, do we automatically go back to the previous meeting?
So you can hit, so hit leave, and then you're gonna hit resume. Okay. So
Okay, thank you for the guidance.
the window.
Hang up or leave?
No, you can. I guess I was
Leave looks like a hang up.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
leave, and then resume the next meeting. Okay.
Got it.
And if we don't, you can probably dial back in through the original link.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
I
say-
know I'm going to be the one that mixes it up.
No, you got it. Thanks, Rob.
Sorry, actually, sorry. How do I get back into the main group again? Or do I just-
Yeah. So click leave here, and then click on resume on the other window. Leave and then-
That's like the red phone button.
Yeah, the red button.
Yeah. Oh wait, hold on. The recording. Okay, so the red phone button.
Whenever I leave, I keep coming back here.
Okay. Hans, I'm gonna kick you out. Okay.
Please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.